Hi everyone, it's Miss Mika again. I'm really excited to show you one of my favorite ways of painting, An Artist by Vincent van Gogh. And he was a post-impressionist painter and had a really beautiful way of showing emotion through lines and painting strokes that are wavy and like little kind of dashes or little strokes. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a technique you can practice in your book today. So as you can see, I've got newspaper underneath my art book. I also have a little pot of water so that we can rinse our brush. But more important, you need a little rag or cloth just next to you, because when your brush is wet and drippy, after you clean it, it's just good to dry it a little bit so that this doesn't get very watery. You want a lot more control with having paint that's a bit thicker rather than very watery when you do this technique. Good to remember. So I've got some colors. I want to show maybe a moody emotion, a little bit like the Starry Night. So I'm going to paint some of that in my book just to practice the type of strokes that Vincent van Gogh used. So I'm going to use some blue. I'm just going to start with blue. I don't want a big blobby amount. That's going to make a mess in my book and I'll have no control with paint. So I'm going to wipe my brush on the side. I have just enough and I'm creating baby strokes. So I'm going to try and imagine a swirling kind of mood like the starry sky. Maybe on the board you might have that picture up. So you could try and create maybe a spiral of little strokes. Can you see that? Now these are quite thick. What's happening to the paint in my brush? It's getting drier and drier. Those strokes are really nice though, those little kind of hairy lines, thanks to my brush. So I dip my brush back in, I wipe it, and I could maybe even go over some of those lines there that were a little bit hairy. See that one? A little bit sparse of paint. So I can touch it up, because that's what we do as painters. We touch up our lines, the ones that we're not happy with, dip it, wipe it, and gently touch them up. I think the heavier you press, when I press really hard, I get a fat line. But if I press really lightly, like trying to get the very tip of the brush, you can get little thin lines. So try and experiment. You might want some fat strokes in there. I've got some fat ones, maybe some fat ones on the inside. Can you see as I'm going around, I'm getting a spiral shape? So pattern and lines were really important to artists like Van Gogh. And I also am going to use, so that should dry fairly fast. I'm going to rinse my brush, wipe it, and then just use the rag just to take the water out so it's not going to get messy. I've got some purple paint, so I'm going to wipe so it's not too blobby. And I'm going to swirl some purple paint into my painting as well. Little strokes. It's like pointillism. You could use dots, and I think Van Gogh used a lot of dots, but I think when we want to show wavy kind of lines, you might want to use more waves like that. So you can kind of experiment with movement, creating lines on your page. You could try like Starry Night, or you could design your own wavy lines with the brush. See how it's getting dry? So I can go over that again, can't I? So nice. So I've got some purple in there. I've rinsed my brush. I've got some red too, but I thought it might be nice to make maybe a pink color. So I'm going to add a bit of red. What will happen to the white? Mix it. What's happening? What color is it turning now? Isn't that clever? If I took all that white into the red, it wouldn't change so much, but I took a little bit of red into the white. There we go. So now I have some pink. Wipe it, that's a lot of paint in that brush, so wipe it a little bit. Use the tip of my brush, and I might start streaking in some of this pink color, just to give it a bit of gentle softness rather than making it too heavy or too dark. I wonder if I can overlap this pink onto some of the blue parts, onto the bigger ones. It changes colour a little bit. There's a lot of white here as well. I wonder if I could maybe do some watercolour as the background and then do my strokes onto the page. I'm also going to take a little bit of the red and blend it into the pink. So you can experiment like this as well, and you can watch my other video about how to do it when you do your real superheads. So this is a really great way of having a look at how to create movement with tiny little lines like a post-impressionist artist. Good luck!